in the midst of a series where we're talking about dialogue. And dialogue, when we think of it, sometimes we think of it as a discussion between two people. But that's not really what it means. It's from two words. Dia means through, not to. And log is from a word, maybe you've heard it, logos. And it's a Greek word for word. So dialogue is through words. And when we talk about dialogue, we're talking about conversation that enables walls between people to be pulled down. To practice dialogue is to do something that God is very committed to. And if you look at this verse, it's under the first point in your worship folder, it talks about the wisdom from above. And there's a difference between the impact of the wisdom from above and the impact of the wisdom from below. And it says the wisdom from above that comes from heaven is, first of all, pure. Then, and look at these words that describe it: peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. When it says impartial and sincere, I think that's probably better translated in terms of the words that it's what it's not. It's not hypocritical and it's not judgmental. And what this describes then is the wisdom from above. So if you want to know the kind of influence that God brings, the kind of influence that Jesus brought, here's some words that describe it: pure, peace-loving, gentle. And Jesus said he was gentle, reasonable, full of mercy and good fruit, not hypocritical and not judgmental. The wisdom that comes from heaven builds bridges of understanding. And that's the sense of the word. This is a picture of two people that perhaps are separated by a lot of different assumptions. And what wisdom from above does, it provides the basis upon which two people, maybe coming from different places, can find some common ground. Now, they might not fully agree with one another, but at least they'll understand one another. That's what dialogue accomplishes. That's the purpose of it. The Magic of Dialogue by Daniel Yankelevich. That's the book we're talking about, secular book. Interesting, though. Quick read. The Magic of Dialogue. He talks about dialogue, says for it to be dialogue, there's got to be three things that make for dialogue as distinct from discussion. These things don't have to be there for discussion or debate or decision-making. Dialogue, through words. There has to be equality. There's got to be empathy. And there's got to be exploration. Let's look at very briefly. And this morning we're going to look at exploration. Equality. There's got to be a level playing field. There can only be dialogue if those in positions of authority temporarily suspend that position of authority and everybody's on the same level. If it's be high and mighty behind a big desk, dialogue's not going to happen. It comes from around the desk. And for the time being, says, okay, it's safe for us to talk. And there needs to have been trust established. For there to be equality, sometimes you have to work at it. But that's number one, equality. The second thing there's got to be is empathy. Empathy is the ability to think someone else's thoughts and feel someone else's feelings. This is indispensable to dialogue. Again, the difference between discussion and dialogue. Discussion, a lot of times when you discuss something with somebody or debate something with somebody, they're saying something and you're thinking, okay, gee, that's baloney. You know, I'm going to say this when he stops talking. And with dialogue, it's not so much win or lose. It's, okay, now I might not agree with what you're saying, but I'm going to try to understand it. That's what dialogue does. Even though I don't agree with what you're saying, if it's dialogue, I'm going to say, why do you think that? Why is that important to you? And in discussion, what we usually do is, no, we just can't wait to get in and make our point. And there's places for that. But with dialogue, if that's the purpose, then we're going to suspend judgment and exercise these and not exercise this. But there's going to be a time to exercise this, because not only do you need to understand them, they need to understand you. Dialogue does go two ways. It's not just, now you listen to me and that's it. I need to listen to you for there to be dialogue. Some people aren't ready for dialogue. Some people want to debate, fine. So then, if you don't want to debate, you go away. But some people are ready for dialogue, and then you can practice that. Can't force it, though. Daniel Yankelevich states that a gesture of empathy is probably the closest thing to an open sesame for dialogue. I told a story last week, briefly reiterated, about a teacher who was very frustrated, marked this test really hard, and mother after mother and dad after dad are coming in and saying, I want my kid to get into an Ivy League school. What the deal? And so there's this one mother comes in, and they're same thing, and this mother then, in the middle of things getting heated, said, you know what, it must be really difficult for you to have all these boomer mothers coming in complaining about these grades. And I wouldn't be here if it didn't matter so much. There's a gesture of empathy. The teacher relaxed, felt understood, was in a position then to listen to this mother, and then they ended up being able to solve a problem. That's what dialogue does. Then there's exploration. In dialogue, participants are encouraged to examine their own assumptions and those of other participants. Yankelevich says, arguably the most striking difference between discussion and dialogue is this process of bringing assumptions into the open while simultaneously suspending judgment. I'm going to say that again. The thing that differentiates dialogue from discussion is bringing assumptions out in the open while simultaneously suspending judgment. Again, if somebody's talking about what they deeply believe, if you've leveled the playing field, if you've given a sense for, no, I really want to understand, I'm using these twice, and tell me. And if I say, well, you know what, this is what's really important to me, it's going to shut down dialogue. It's got to be simultaneously listening and suspending judgment. Again, it's not a time to weigh in, it's just time to listen. That's critical for somebody to feel safe enough to be able to say what they really feel. Wouldn't you agree with me? You're not really going to open up what's inside unless you feel safe. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the person agrees. It does mean that you don't feel like you're being judged, and it really seems that they want to understand. When that's in place, we'll open up with each other. Once these assumptions are out in the open, they're not to be dismissed out of hand, but considered with respect, even when participants disagree with them. And with dialogue, sometimes with discussion, you want to stay neutral. You don't want to be too emotive in discussion. You want to be in debate. You don't want to let your feelings get involved. Dialogue is different. Again, with dialogue, you might express your views very strongly, not judging, but very strongly. You say, and in dialogue, it's okay. Especially if is equality and empathy, and if there's a situation where you feel like you can express what's deep, that's what dialogue is really about. Trying to get what's underneath the matter. In this book, again, The Magic of Dialogue, Yankelevich gives an example. Here's what happened. This Ivy League university, the trustees are attending their once every quarter meeting. One item of business to consider a replacement for one of the most popular faculty members. Trustees are sorry to see him go because this guy is not only a researcher, but he's really good with the postdoctoral students. So this research university has a bunch of postdoctoral students running around, and many of the tenured teachers are brilliant, but not real people. And this Dr. Robertson is both. He's a researcher, and he's really good with the postdoctoral students. And he meets with them, and he gives them advice, helps them with different things. And the other senior scientists don't extend themselves in the same way. The director of the institute proposes to invite a famous biologist to fill in Robertson's shoes. This guy most likely is going to win the Nobel Prize for science. He's brilliant. The only thing that might be a little questionable is that he's socially awkward, very alone and aloof, doesn't get along with people very well. He's a great scientist, but he's not as good with people. Ordinarily, the trustees would rubber stamp anyone that is put forward by the faculty. They say, sure, you guys know what you're talking about. On this one occasion, an entrepreneur who is a trustee who is in business, he wonders if this person is chosen, what it will do to the postdoctoral students. And it starts to create some tension. The academic trustees want the Institute to focus on its mission, research. We don't want to be distracted. Let these postdoctoral students run around. The trustees from the business side are thinking that, but they're reluctant to say. Finally, one guy gets up and says, do you think that maybe we're encouraging the faculty to be too specialized and isolated? I've heard the Institute criticized for failing to encourage cooperation between fields, and maybe we're losing touch with the big picture. And you can start to feel something start to become edgy. The trustees who are academic guys, they're saying, you guys don't know what you're talking about. And the trustees who are business say, hey, this is a business too. And if we don't take care of these postdoctoral students, they're not going to come. We're going to lose money. We're going to lose endowment. We don't care about that. We do care about that. And you can imagine what's happening. The meeting's getting hot. One guy gets up. He's a business trustee. This is what he says. You know, those of us from business are all generalists. Naturally, we're uncomfortable with any kind of specialization. But that's what makes this institute what it is. It is the most highly specialized scientists at the institute who have made the real breakthrough. So if we are uncomfortable, that's probably a sign that the institute is doing something right. People start to laugh. That's right. The business guys, they start to relax. The academic guys start to relax. What he did, he put his finger on an assumption. You guys are specialists. We're generalists. And it's naturally that we probably would have a little problem with each other. But once those assumptions are out in the open, what do you imagine happened? People relaxed. Now, what do you think we should do about that? What they ended up doing is pulling out two different things. What should we do with the postdoctoral students? And they ended up creating a strategy so that they could be taken care of. And then once they thought about that, they rubber-stamped this scientist. They said, sounds like a great choice. That wouldn't have happened had there not been dialogue. There was equality. At one point, this guy kind of felt that the heart of the matter was able to express something that got at the underlying assumptions, and it made all the difference in the world. In terms of how God deals with us, apparently, he feels it's important for us to understand that he understands. Again, if you're God, you can do anything you want. And if you're going to create this, Jesus is God in human form. He could have made Jesus any kind of person he wanted him to be. Jesus came across as being gentle and sympathetic. Apparently, we need to know that he understands what it's like. And what we're going to find? We talked about it with the kids. Well, let's look at this verse. Look what this verse says. Hebrews 4:13. Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has gone through the heavens, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold firmly to the faith we profess. We do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet was without sin. Let us therefore approach the throne of grace with confidence. We talk about that word confidence. It's a very specific type of confidence. Now, some of you might not know. I'm going to tell you really quick. The Greek word, not that you need to know the Greek word, but it's parousia. The reason why I tell you the word is there's different Greek words that are translated confidence. This is a very specific kind of confidence. Here's what it means. When it says, let us therefore approach the throne of grace with confidence, this confidence is what happens when I come and I'm invited into the presence of somebody who's probably a superior and am given the opportunity to speak freely. This superior says, permission to speak freely, and I feel free to be able to verbalize. That's what this word means. So here's what it says. Let us therefore approach the throne of grace with confidence. when you come before God, what he is saying is, listen to me. I want you to speak freely with me. I want this to be a place where you tell me things about yourself. And it's not a suggestion. This is a command. Dialogue is important to God. He understands that in order to change our heart, we've got to be understood. You really can't have a relationship unless you talk to somebody, can you? You really can't, can you? You can listen to somebody and do what they say. You can tell people things. But if there's going to be a relationship, there's some give and take. You have to give them and take things from them. God wants us to know that he sympathizes with us, and because, in fact, you know what sympathy is? Would you agree with me? It says we have a high priest who sympathizes with our weakness. You know what sympathy is? The springboard into dialogue. You know why God tells you he sympathizes with you? So you'll talk to him. Why would he want you to talk to him? He really is pretty smart. God wants a relationship with you. And he understands it's probably not going to be a relationship unless there's conversation. And that's why he tells you he sympathizes with you. He doesn't want a robot. Confidence is the ability to speak freely. The verse encourages and commands dialogue. Sympathy is a springboard for dialogue, not an excuse or not a substitute for dialogue. Some of us, we're not really good. We've been talking about this. We tend to fall on either side of a line. Some of us err on the side of being quiet. We really don't tell people what we think. We hide things. Some of us are hiders. Others of us are hurlers. Whoop, there was some bumping that happened. I saw some bumping. Some of us are hiders, some of us are hurlers. And we get things out there, and either way, it's those of us who are hiders, we do the problem. Now, sometimes what we do is we think, well, he knows everything, and therefore I should just tell myself that and shut up. Because he knows everything that I should. And in fact, the Lord's Prayer says, God knows what you need before you ask him. And then some of us say, so I shouldn't ask him. Yes, you should. Why? Because this is what this verse commands. He really does want you to. And so some of us who hide, we say, well, I probably shouldn't ask God anything because he already knows. And I shouldn't. And what God says, yes, you do need to talk to me. So therefore, the hurlers, they understand the value of talking. But sometimes they might be still a little bit first, a little bit thinking, I don't have to come into his presence and go, I can maybe look at whose presence I'm coming into for a minute. Some of us just worry out loud. You ever do that? You're worried about something, and then we get to God. It's like, and we don't even think about whose presence we're entering into. Think about it. Think about it. God of the universe, and he does want you to talk with him. So, hiders, we need to talk. Hurlers, we need to maybe sit for a minute before we talk. But either way, we're to dialogue because that's important. It would be a mistake to overlook the significant role given to dialogue. Again, it's not a suggestion, it's a command. You know what God wants us to talk to him about? How many of you get everything you pray for? Anybody get everything they pray for? What good is prayer if you don't know what if you're not going to get what you ask for? Some of you asked that question. Nothing happened. What good is prayer? You know what prayer is for? It doesn't necessarily enable you to eliminate tension. It's not what it's for. You know what it does? It helps you endure it. Here's the deal. Endurance is critical in spirituality. We have to learn to put up with not having what we want and having what we don't want. We need to learn to put up with doing what we don't want and not doing what we do want to do. And dialogue makes that easier to endure. Can you imagine coming to God, not having what you want, and telling him, bringing your concerns to him? What is it about? Think about this. And we talked about giving concerns and taking commitments. It might look like this. Jay mentioned economics. Maybe it's an economic deal. You don't know where your job is going to be. What would it look like to dialogue with God about that? What would that look like? Not hiding it. He already knows what I need, so I shouldn't tell him. Not hurling. Who cares about just what would it look like to dialogue? It might look like this. Hold your concerns. God, I'm scared. I know you provide for everything, but you know what? I'm looking in the future, and I think I might get laid off. That's giving your concerns to him. And he wants to hear them. But you know what he wants as well? And we might see this in terms of breathing. This is exhaling. Get it out. This thing inside, get it out. Do that with me. Exhale your concerns. Do that with me. Now you know what will happen if you're trying to run a race and all you do is exhale. What would that look like? Try it with me. Sometimes you got to inhale. You need to learn to inhale. What is inhale like? You know what inhale is? Taking his commitments and bringing them inside. God, I'm scared. I'm glad that you see me. And if, we talk about those books, it's really not about hawking books. There's some things that might help. If you haven't been through 40 days through the 10 Commitments, grab a copy. If you have $5, throw it in the thing. If you don't, take a book. We really want to have, and why? Because if you think about God's commitments to you, it might change you. We're so prone to look at God and then look at ourselves. And we really have a hard time thinking about what he's like. And how would it help you if you thought about the fact that God sees you, but not in a bad way, like this. God, I'm scared. I'm glad that you see me. You understand the fear that's inside me. You know that I care for my family. You know that I care for what's going to happen to me when I grow old. I don't want to depend on the kids. I don't want to live with the kids, and I don't have return. Thanks that you see me. God, would you help me to know what to do? Uncertain economic times, I don't know what to do. Thanks that you sympathize. You understand what you're doing? You know what you're doing? You're breathing. And you know why you need to breathe? Because you're going to need to get up tomorrow. And you're going to need to go to an uncertain job. And it's easier to endure when you're breathing. You can breathe during the day. You don't have to wait till nighttime when you're praying. God, here he comes. Thanks that you understand what's inside me. But sometimes just knowing that God's with you, it really is very helpful. Helps you to endure. That's one of the benefits of dialogue. And don't just do that. I'm going to apply it a different way. Not just not having what you want to have. You know what really the kicker is for us? And if I point at the thing inside you that's tearing you apart, it's not really that you don't have what you want. It's that your reaction to not having what you want, you're not doing what you want to do. Some of you are doing this. You're pulling and withdrawing from everyone. It's like you're going away. You're hiders. And because you have come to believe that no one's going to do what I want anyways, you know what you've stopped doing? You've stopped caring, and you've stopped talking. And you're this fixture that sits in the house, but you really don't talk to anyone because you don't think anybody really cares. Some of you do that. Others of you have really given in to becoming caustic and very critical and very angry, and you don't like who you've become as a hider or as a hurler. You know what's amazing? You can talk to God about that. And when you talk to him, when you're not doing what you want to do, you'll find something with him that's very powerful. Here's what this looks like. God, you know what? I'm acting like an idiot. I feel like I'm hiding, and I don't like what I'm doing. You see me. You understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. You understand how much I hate this. God, I don't want to keep doing this. Thank you that you deal gently with me. You don't back away from me. You sympathize with me. Can you help me to kind of break this? You love me, you tell me to come to the throne of grace to receive mercy. I want to be somebody who's involved with the family. I want to be someone who stops hurling grenades. When you start talking to God, when you're not doing the things that you know he and you want to do, you know what happens? The breathing. What happens? Something loosens inside. You're not alone. Both of these people feel alone. The person hurling feels just as alone as the person hiding. And if you're a hider and if you're a hurler, either way, you know what God wants you to do? Talk to me. Shh. I know. I see you. I sympathize with you. I deal gently with you, and I love you. I change you. I choose you. Good's ahead of you. Good's guaranteed. I'll give you the power to persevere. I'll give you the power to be content. You give him your concerns. You get his commitments. And then you change overnight. Yes, hallelujah. I don't hide anymore. Is that what happens? Oh, you know what happens? But the intensity gets turned down just a little bit. Just a little bit. And you don't feel quite so alienated. You might take a step out and then retreat back. Little steps. If we don't feel stuck, we feel better about ourselves. Knowing that God is with you, thinking about him being with you, will help you to breathe and help you to start to think differently. You're not changing. Well, maybe if you change overnight, tell me what you do. It hasn't worked for me yet. I remember I was home and feeling lousy about something, and I did that. You know, I know about hiding. Again, I had a lot more stuff in hiding than I do at hurling because I'm a hider. I found myself sitting at the edge of all the family, just not talking to anyone. And some of you know me and says, that's not surprising, Mike. But I didn't like it. I didn't like it, but I've learned. Helps a little bit. When we come to God, God gives us the permission, really, not just the permission, he tells us to speak freely. Not only is this the way God influences us, it's the way we influence others. The wisdom from above is first pure, then peace-loving, gentle, reasonable, full of mercy and good fruits. It's the way we change others as well. Let's look at an illustration. Jesus has a conversation with the woman. The power of gentle persuasion. Let's read about what Jesus' conversation. The woman said to him, Jesus went to a woman, Samaritan woman. Samaria is in the northern part of Israel, used to be one, and then they divided in half. The southern kingdom was called Judah. Northern kingdom is called Israel, or Samaria. They went into captivity, and so Jews versus Samaritans, bad blood. It's like the south versus the north after the Civil War. Bad blood. And they were related, but because of the wars and they had done lousy things to each other, they had a hard time. So anyways, Jesus comes and he spends time with this woman. He's thirsty, and then he asks her for a drink. Let's pick up the narrative. The woman said to him, Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water. He told her, go call your husband. Said, go call your husband and come back. I have no husband, she replied. Jesus said to her, you are right when you say you have no husband. The fact is you've had 5 husbands, The man you now have is not your husband. What you've said is quite true. Sir, the woman said, I can see that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem. Jesus declared, believe me, woman, the time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we know. For salvation is from the Jews. Yet, time is coming, and has now come, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and in truth. The woman said, I know that Messiah, called Christ, is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. Then Jesus declared, I who speak to you am he. Some people say Jesus never claimed to be God. This is clearly, he was the Messiah, the Son of God. He's claiming to be the one coming from God. I who speak to you am he. Doesn't get much clearer than that. Just then the disciples returned and were surprised to find him talking with a woman, but no one asked, what do you want, or why are you talking with her? Then leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to the disciples, come see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Christ? They came out of the town and made their way toward him. Interesting that Jesus' equality, what he did before, he kind of put himself at the same level with this woman, empathy, and you know what happens because he does this? She ends up getting out some things that she had been troubled with. If she didn't sense that Jesus was somebody safe to talk to, she would not have raised these questions. But she raises a question. Sir, the woman said, I can see that you're a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem. That was one huge thing between Samaritans in the north and Jews in the south. Because God says in the Old Testament, you have to go down to Jerusalem. And the Samaritans didn't go down to Jerusalem, so they felt like they were out of luck. And with Jesus, and this was a really big deal. And for her to bring it up to Jesus would have been a show of confidence. I can talk to this guy. I guarantee you, if Jesus had been judgmental and harsh and really wanting to win a debate, she really would not have told him what mattered. Sometimes we think that the best way we can stand up for Christ and have an influence is to be right. We exercise this twice as much as we exercise this. We learn that someone believes differently than we do, and then we just get out the verse and debate. Now, there's a place for debate. But if this is a relationship, dialogue comes first. This is what Jesus does with this woman. And because he does dialogue, they end up getting at some things. She feels safe. She says, you Jews say that because we're not worshiping in the south, we're out of luck. You know what Jesus ends up saying to her? Salvation is from the Jews, but a time is coming and has now come where true worshipers worship it's not about sacred space and sacred time. You don't have to go down to Jerusalem to worship God. And it doesn't have to be at the festivals. It can be any time. A time had now come when those who worship God will worship in spirit and in truth. And you know what this woman ended up doing? Holy smokes, I'm not an outsider. Check. She had always felt in her heart that as a Samaritan, she was class B. She raised the issue with God, and you know what God ended up telling her? Something that allowed her to go, I can be an insider. I can be an insider. Some of you feel like spiritual outsiders. You do things that you know he doesn't like, and you haven't learned to breathe with him. You're determined to believe that unless you stop doing this thing, you can't have fellowship with him. You're dead wrong. It's connection, then correction. This woman connects with Jesus, and that connection, listen to me, connection, then correction. It's not clean up your life, and then we're connected. It's we're connected in the context of this connection. You'll hear and learn things that will enable you to change. You'll learn to breathe. Connection, then correction. That's what this woman found out. Oh, geez. She heard something that changed her. And she tries another thing. She says, the woman said, I know that Messiah, called Christ, is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. Then Jesus declared, I who speak to you am he. and what she ends up understanding, then at this point, you're really him? And you know what helped her? That she understood what he was like. Some people believe that Jesus is God. But the God they believe in doesn't make that good news. I'm going to say that again. Some people believe Jesus is God. But because of who their God is, that's not good news. Some people believe that Jesus is nice, but God the Father is harsh. You know what Jesus reflects God. What is God the Father like? He's like Jesus. You know what God the Father wants? Relationship, dialogue. He understands what you're dealing with. And he wants a relationship because you know what the deal is? When you experience connection, it's going to change you. Within the context of security, that you really can talk with him. Exhale. Inhale. You can endure. You hide a little bit less. You hurt a little bit less. You start to change. Slowly. Belief is important. I'm going to have the worship team. I'm going to tell you a little story. While the worship team's come up, setting up, I'm going to tell you a little story, then we'll sing a song. The beginning of why Jews and Samaritans had problems. Here's what happened. Solomon was king. Israel was in its heyday. Huge kingdom. It was all one. No north versus south. So he came to the place where Solomon, to do what he did, a lot of people had to work and a lot of people had to give a lot of money. Taxes were really heavy when Solomon was king. How did people feel about high taxes? Not very good. So, anyways, Solomon ends up, the Boom Boom brothers end up becoming involved in government. Rehoboam and Jeroboam. Boom Boom. Rehoboam. Rehoboam's in the south. He is the king of Judah. Solomon puts him into place. And people come to him from the north. Jeroboam is leading them. So Jeroboam comes to Rehoboam and says, I'll tell you what, here's the deal. You lay off taxes and we'll all be one big happy family. And so Rehoboam talks to his advisors. One of them say, give in. This will be great. Other advisors say, be tough, get tough. And he follows the get tough. He goes, you think my dad was tough? And so then ends up, they go, okay, we're out of here. This guy Jeroboam, this is south, this is north. He goes to the north. And God told him beforehand, you're going to have 10 tribes. Rehoboam in the south, 2 tribes. Jeroboam in the north, 10 tribes. He has 10 tribes, and this is what God says to him. If you do what I say, you will have an everlasting kingdom. I will never take this kingdom from you. I want you to listen to what happens. Jeroboam then becomes the king of the 10 tribes of northern Israel. And God told him that people were supposed to go down to Jerusalem to worship. And you know what he starts to think is this? This is not good. If I let people go down to the south, to Rehoboam, they'll stay there, and I'm going to lose my kingdom. Hello, Jeroboam, do you remember what God said? He said, do what I want you to do, and you'll have a kingdom forever. You know what he forgot? What did he forget? He forgot God's commitments. That's what he forgot. And because he forgot God's commitments, you know what he did? He built 2 altars in the north. Golden temples that became terrible. This little shift. I need to make places where people can worship up in the north. And those places led to an idolatry. They ended up getting to the place where they were sacrificing their children to Molech, the god of the Assyrians. Killing kids. And where did it start? Here. God made a commitment, and he forgot that it was made. I think there's a point. It's very powerful when you believe his commitments to you. And you look at why we do the lousy things we do. Now, none of us are going to be perfect. It's because we call God's commitment into question. Say, Mike, what should we do? Here's what I'd say to do. why don't you think about God's commitments to you? Why don't you make more room for that? I've got to think about what I do. Don't think about what to do for him. Think about what he commits to do for you. What will happen if you do that? You know what will happen? It'll start to change your heart. It will start to turn your prayer into dialogue. It will make you more like Jesus. I'm thankful for your desire, you're relational, and you want us to come into relationship with you, and some of us are better than others. All of us have a ways to go. We don't have what we want, we don't do what we want, and we either hide or hurl, and we don't hold these things and approach your throne and speak freely with you, which is what you tell us to do. You want us to revere you. You want us to be respectful, but you want us to be open, both of them. I pray that you'd help us to do that, so that in the context of connection, we can hear you tell us things, see things differently that will make a difference, just like it made with this woman who ended up not feeling like an outsider, feeling like that she had a pipeline, someone from God sent to talk to her, that she could listen and she could learn, and it really changed her. She runs back to her village, and her life has changed. And we'd like to be like that. I don't know if we'd be as dramatic, but we have areas that we'd like to be more loving. And would you, in the context of a relationship, help us to know, to speak freely with you, to exhale our concerns and inhale your commitments so that we could not be alone. And in not being alone, both receive and give love to others. In Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for hanging around. You've been helping